In today's video, I am going to be breaking down my favorite thing, and that is high dividend ETFs. And of course, these are all going to be on the US stock market. So let's get down and let's check these out and see if they are a good fit for your investing portfolio. So the first one we are going to look at is Global X S&P 500 Covered Call. XYLD is the ticker. And the yield on this guy is 9.5% right now, which is absolutely amazing. From there, the average volume is 106,000 shares traded per day on average, and the MER is 0.6. So basically, for every $100 that you are going to invest onto or into this ETF, you're essentially going to spend about 60 cents per year, and that is for, of course, these guys to invest your money. With the volume at 106,000 shares, basically that is saying to us, as long as we're not buying tens of thousands of shares at a single time, we should be fine at being able to buy and sell at that kind of volume. However, most of us are probably not going to be buying 5, 10, 15,000 shares at a single time, so we don't really have to worry about volume when it comes to this ETF. And of course, covered call, if you're new to the whole covered call idea, basically you hold stock, and by holding that stock, we are selling a call against that stock, and then we can collect the premium, which is the money that whoever buys that call pays us. And in a sense, that person is almost gambling, because let's say currently, just as an example, when it comes to this ETF, they would do the actual calls on the individual stocks. However, let's just say as an example, we make a call right now to say you can buy this stock for $49, let's say 3 months from now. And you can buy that stock only if it hits, let's say, $55. If it hits $55, then we would obviously sell them the stock at $49. However, if it did not reach $55, then we keep the premium and we keep our shares as well. So there's just a brief overview of what a covered call is. If you would like, I do have videos on this channel that you can check out that really do break down a covered call in more depth. Now, something that is quite interesting when it comes to this ETF is that it has had some nice growth a couple of years ago, then it sort of stagnated and it didn't really go all that far up or down. However, it did trade sideways and it was not getting out of that funk. However, when it comes to covered calls, it's usually a good idea to wait until they drop, and then you can, of course, pile in when they start dropping. You would obviously be buying a little bit all the way down so that you can really win on the upside. Now, of course, everything went down right there. Everything in the entire world, I don't care where you live, everything went down, and now it's slowly starting to climb back. The only question I have about this is, will it get back to these highs, and will it surpass those highs? I personally think that the stock market has some time to grow still, and I think that that could still be a factor. And now with most of the massive growth that's gone, which is why as a covered call, this has not rose to the same amount as a regular stock, this is probably a good time to get into this ETF. See, with covered calls, they're not good for when you've got massive growth like we've had over the past year or so. They're good for when the stock market is pretty much going sideways. The only thing I don't like about this ETF is the fact that it does give you I would say more likely a random number of dividend. It's not going to be like a BMO covered call like what we have in Canada, where it's a set number. It's going to be 12 cents, 12 cents, 12 cents, 12 cents, 12 cents. No, you're going to be getting a different number. However, if we actually look down, let's say June 2020 to June 2021, it did rise. And then if we look at, for example, May also rose, which is fantastic. You want to see at least the dividend raising year over year, and that's what we do see with this ETF, so that is why I picked this as one of my favorite. Now, the long holdings that they have here is, of course, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet again, and then Berkshire Hathaway, Tesla, and Nvidia. This is a very strong number of companies, and with the covered call strategy, if there is just small growth or barely any growth at all, you will see massive benefits of holding a covered call ETF. If we're having what we've had over the past year, where it's basically been a rocket ship going up towards the moon, then at that point, what you would see is, of course, the covered call not accelerating as high as the market itself. Next is the Vanguard High Dividend Yield Index Fund ETF. VYM is the ticker, currently trades at $105 per share, and its yield is 2.8%. From there, the expense ratio is what I really like. It's really low at 0.06, so of course, with money involved, every $100, this would be about 6 cents. And the average volume, you're looking at 1.6 million shares, so you're not going to have to worry about if there's enough shares being traded to get in and out of it. This is a very liquid ETF. And what you're going to be getting here is slow or at least moderate growth until, of course, the last year. I think this is why I think there's going to be about a month or two of just stagnated sideways trading. That's going to happen anytime you have growth like that. However, consistent, slow, or mediocre growth is what I also do like if you're looking to hold something for the long term. If you're getting closer to retirement, definitely a fantastic option. Now again, a randomized number, you're not going to be getting a set like 70 cents, 70, 70, 70, 70 like you do with some of the BMO ETFs like up here in Canada. What you are going to be getting is hopefully you will be seeing some growth, and that's what we do see when you start comparing March to March, you're seeing some growth. And then if you compare June to June, a lot of ETFs did go down in June, mainly because some of them did pay their dividends earlier. So it is something to really compare. However, if you compare December to December, you're seeing some growth again. So as long as it pays a dividend, it's a consistent dividend, you should be fine. These are its top companies. Some of my favorite out of this list is Intel. I think that they've been really hammered hard lately, even though there's been a chip shortage. I really am in love with banks. I love banks so much, and JP Morgan and, of course, Bank of America are in the top. Home Depot I don't think is going to have as much massive growth as what we've seen, but I think there's going to be nice consistent growth. I am a bit worried about Johnson & Johnson and with their vaccine. However, it seems like they are getting some sales going with that. However, this is not just a vaccine play, it's just that's the story that's going to be playing with them for a while. Next is the Global X NASDAQ 100 Covered Call and Growth ETF. So what you're hoping for here is, of course, a high dividend with a lot of growth. This is a nice combination play that I really love. For some reason it shows NA next to dividend, but we're going to get to that in a bit. But what we are really looking at is, of course, the growth. Just like any covered calls, it's going to be usually around 0.6 to 0.7. Here we see 0.6%, and the volume is actually quite low at 10,000 shares. So of course, if you're only going to be buying 100 shares at a time, or if you've got maybe 1 or 2 shares and you've got one of those free trading accounts, this might be a good idea. The ticker is QYLG. And of course, the year-to-date return so far is only 7.7%. So this is actually a fairly new ETF, which is probably why it does show NA. However, for the dividend. However, as we can see here, nice consistent growth over the past couple of months anyways. It has grown from $27 to $31 per share, which in my books is pretty good. And it hasn't had, considering it's a NASDAQ ETF, it hasn't had any crazy amounts of downswings recently in this time frame here, while the rest of the market really has. So it has had the double bottom here, which is what you usually really like to see. So this is a positive here. Some of its top holdings is some of the biggest companies in the world: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook. Some of the ones that I really do like is Apple. I am a huge fan of Apple, same as Tesla and, of course, Alphabet. Those two for sure, because they basically pay most of my bills. And then Nvidia is another big, amazing pick in my books, as well as PayPal. Now, the average distribution / dividend that ETF does give you is about 15 cents per share, which then equals out to be, just rough math, about, I'm going to say 5%, but let's do the math. Ends up to be about 6%. So at that point in time, it's a pretty good dividend, and I personally like it when there's a 5 or higher percent dividend. With the growth that this is going to give you, I personally feel that this is a great option. If you're in your 20s or even in your 30s, this could be amazing. Now this next one is Global X S&P Covered Call and Growth. So this is going to be the whole S&P 500. And of course this one again does show the yield, but I'll get to that in a bit, because this is still another new one. 0.6%, low volume as well. Check out that growth from October of last year at around $26, currently sitting at almost $31. Looks pretty darn strong. So here we can see the dividends on this guy, and of course what we are seeing is about every quarter you're going to be seeing about a 10 to 10.5% or cent dividend. Let's just call it 11 cents. Which ends up to be only around 1.5%, but we have to remember that some of these covered calls are fairly new. And of course, what I've seen with BMO, when they bring out a new covered call ETF and then you see it run over time, they really substantially increase their dividend within the first year. Now, obviously, I can't speak for Global X, but at the same time, at 1.5%, and it's the S&P 500, basically you're holding the whole, like almost like an SPY, but it's running covered calls against it and going more towards the growth. It really does seem like it's going to be a really nice ETF to hold, but in my opinion, I would still wait about a year to really make a for sure call on getting that ETF. I would wait about a year personally. Some of the biggest companies, once again, Apple, Microsoft. You're seeing some of the biggest ones, of course, Alphabet, Berkshire Hathaway, JP Morgan, Tesla, Johnson & Johnson, some of the bigger companies in the world. Now, this is another interesting one, iShares Dividend Growth ETF. So what you're hoping for is the dividend as well as the stock to grow. 2.1% dividend, so not massive. However, it's got a low MER. This is going to be a fantastic option for those who are looking for something safe. Ticker is DGRO. And with iShares Core Dividend Growth, it's a very safe ETF. You're going to have a smaller dividend, still one that looks to grow the dividend over time. 1.7 million shares getting traded per day. This is one of those ETFs that if it was your first $10,000 to invest, I would invest into it, or if you were getting close to retirement, this is definitely something to look at. You are looking at something that over the past a couple of years has grown from about $27, $28 to $51. So it's doubled essentially almost doubled over the past 5 years while paying a quarterly dividend. Obviously, you want to buy it anytime that there's some downturns or some sideways moving. You really want to buy it at those times. And how I was buying my stocks during the recent crisis was to buy a little bit at a time. And I actually got a couple of stocks literally the day of the bottom. So that is, even though I was buying CIBC, BMO, and a whole bunch of them, I was buying them all the way down, and I just got lucky enough to say, oh my god, I'm going to load up the rest, because this last day seemed like there was really ridiculously high volume, and it seemed like there was going to be a turnaround. I really focus my turnaround stocks whenever we have massive down days. Obviously, we were having huge volume throughout that whole entire time, but when you see triple the volume over on one day than what we've been having throughout the whole entire downturn, that is when I was loading up crazy amounts of bank stocks, because I like bank stocks, and that's what I was doing, and I actually somehow magically timed the bottom. That doesn't always happen. However, at the same time, I feel like I felt very smart that day, for the past year, I felt smart. And as we can see, they do grow the dividend over the past couple of years, and they have done that in the history of this ETF as well. I really do like this ETF, even though it's not a massive paying ETF. Massive companies, once again, some of the biggest in the United States. Anyways, I hope that this is kind of giving you a couple of different ideas as to some different ETFs to take a look at. If it has, hit that like button and subscribe. Of course, Just never trust a random YouTuber, never trust a random person. Always do your own research, and I hope to see you guys again next time.